The 5,000 years from the 26th year of Ehud's life to the 2nd year of the reign of Cyrus. Jabin, who was dried up in body, ruled 20 years. Deborah and Barak ruled them 40 years. The children of Israel were in subjection to the Midianites 7 years, and God delivered them by the hands of Gideon, who ruled them 40 years. Abimelech his son reigned after him 3 years. Tola the son of Puah ruled them 23 years. The Yahir the Gileadite 22 years, and again the children of Israel were in subjection to the Ammonites 18 years, and God delivered them by the hand of Naphtah, the man who offered up his daughter as a sacrifice, and he ruled them 6 years. Ibzan of Bethlehem, who is Nashon, ruled them 7 years. Elon, who was from Zebulun, ruled them 10 years. Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, ruled them 8 years, and the children of Israel were in subjection to the Philistines 40 years, and God delivered them by the hand of Samson, and he ruled them 20 years. And the children of Israel lived without a governor for 18 years, and then Eli the priest rose up and ruled them 40 years. And Samuel rose up over them and ruled them 20 years. And in the days of Samuel the children of Israel provoked to wrath God, who had delivered them from the servitude of the Egyptians. And they made Saul the son of Kish king, and he reigned over them 40 years. And in the days of Saul lived Goliath, a giant of the Philistines. He came nigh and reviled Israel, and blasphemed against God. And David the son of Jesse killed him. And David was praised in songs by the daughters of Israel. And Saul persecuted him. And the Philistines slew Saul, because he forsook the Lord, and took refuge with the devils. David reigned over the children of Israel 40 years, and Solomon his son reigned 40 years. And Solomon did great and wonderful things, and it was he who sent to Ophir and brought gold from the mountains of gold, and the ships sailed the sea for 36 months, and then came forth. It was he who built Palmyra in the wilderness, and he carried out there great and wonderful works. And when Solomon passed the borders of the mountain which is called Seir, he found there the altar which Piozakar and Piorzani and Nesnador had built. These were they whom Nimrod the giant sent to Balaam, the priest of the mountain of Seir, because he heard that he wont to consult the signs of the zodiac. And when they were passing the skirts of the mountain, they built there an altar to the sun. And when Solomon saw it, he built a city there and called it Neapolis, more correctly Heliopolis, that is to say, city of the sun. And Solomon also built Aradus in the midst of the sea, and he became so famous and renowned that the report of his wise acts went out into all the lands of the earth. And the queen of Sheba went to hold converse with him, and Solomon loved Hiram, king of Tyre, greatly. And Hiram reigned in Tyre 500 years, from the days of the kingdom of David to the days of the kingdom of Zedekiah, and of all the kings of the children of Israel. And at length he forgot that he was a man, and he blasphemed and said, I am God, and I sit upon the throne of God in the middle of the sea. And Nebuchadnezzar the king killed him. The purple linen of Tyre. And in the days of Hiram the purple-colored apparel worn by the kings first appeared. As a dog was running along the seashore at Tyre, he saw a purple shellfish coming out of the water, and he bit it, and straightway his mouth was filled with blood of that shellfish. And a certain shepherd who saw the dog bought a piece of a woolen cloth, and wiped the dog's mouth with it. And he made that piece of woolen cloth into a crown, and set it upon his head. And as he walked along in the sun, those who saw him thought that rays of fire were coming forth from his head. And when Hiram heard of this, he sent for the man. And when he saw the woolen cloth, he marveled and was astonished. And all the dyers gathered together and marveled at it. And they set out to inquire into this matter. And they found some of these shellfish, and rejoiced greatly. The apostasy of Solomon. And Solomon waxed exceedingly great, and the food provided for his table every day consisted of 40 oxen, 100 head of sheep, 30 measures of fine flour, 60 measures of wheat, and 300 measures of wine, and besides all this, stags and gazelle, and wild antelopes, and other creatures of the desert. And he became forward and transgressed the law, and hearkened not to the commands of his father. And he took to wife 1,000 women from all the peoples whom God hated. And in the time of his old age he gave himself up to women, and he let them play with him, and he hearkened to his words, and did their will. And he denied the God of David his father, and he builded altars to devils, and offered up sacrifices to idols and graven images, and he worshipped the works of the hands. And God turned away his face from him, and he died. And he reigned in Jerusalem 46 years. Rehoboam. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned after him. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he polluted Jerusalem with fornication, and the altars of devils, and the stink of heathendom, and the kingdom of Israel was rent in twain. And in the 5th year of his kingdom, Shishak, the king of Egypt, went up against Jerusalem. And he carried off all the treasure of the service of the house of the Lord, and all the treasure of the kingdom of David, and of that of Solomon, and the vessels of gold, and the vessels of silver. And he magnified himself, and said, I am not taking away treasure which is yours, but the wealth which your fathers took out of Egypt. And Rehoboam died in the heathen practices of his father Solomon. Shishak was the first king of the 22nd dynasty, and reigned about 20 years, that is from 947 to 928 BC before Christ, and he was of Libyan origin. The Egyptian form of his name is Shashank, and it is found with his title Beloved of Amen. And Abijah his son reigned after him, and he destroyed Jerusalem with fornication and with heathen works. Now Melka, the mother of Abdshalom, was his mother, and he died in the heathen practices of his father. And Asa his son reigned after him for 40 years in Jerusalem. He did that which was good before the Lord, and he put away fornication from Jerusalem, and made an end of the heathen practices of his people, for he kept the commandments of God. And he drove them, the idolaters, out of his palace or kingdom, and made them to be a mockery before all the people, because they taught the offerings of sacrifices to idols. And Zerah of Judah went up against him, and God humbled him before Asa. And Asa died in righteousness like his father David. And Jehoshaphat his son reigned after him, and he walked in the ways of Asa his father, and he did that which was pleasing before God. And God was angry with him, because he was a friend of the house of Ahab, and for this reason God did not permit him to bring out gold from Ophir. Now he made ships to send thither, and they were broken to Ezion-Geber. He was 32 years old when he began to reign, and the name of his mother was Azubah, the daughter of Shelah. And Jehoshaphat died in his righteousness. Joram reigned after him, and he was 32 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was pleasing before God, for he sacrificed all the altars of devils, and he died in his heathen practices. Ahaziah his son reigned after him, and he was 22 years old when he began to reign. He lived for 1 year in Jerusalem, and did evil things before God in that year. Because of the wickedness of iniquity which he wrought, God delivered him into the hands of his enemies, and they killed him. When he was dead, his mother Athaliah killed all the royal children of the house of David, imagining that she would uproot the children of the Jews. The only person of the seed of the royal house whom she did not slay was Joash, whom Joshba, the daughter of Joram, the son of Jehoshaphat, carried away secretly and hid with her in her house. The reign of Ahab's sister. And the sister of Ahab reigned 7 years in Jerusalem, and she polluted the city with fornication, for she commanded the women to play the whore without fear, and the men to commit adultery with the wives of their neighbors without incurring any penalty. And she herself committed fornication like Jezebel, and she adopted all the heathen practices of the house of Ahab in Jerusalem. The reign of Joash. And after 7 years the children of Jerusalem considered whom they should make their king. And Joadiah the priest gathered them together in the house of the Lord, in the temple which Solomon had built. And when the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds had gathered together, Jehoiada the priest said unto them, Whom, say ye, shall be king and sit upon the throne of David, except a king and the son of a king? And when he showed him to them, they rejoiced with an exceedingly great joy. And the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds and the runners and the messengers brought the kingdom to the house of the Lord. And the soldiers who were armed surrounded him on all sides. And Jehoiada the priest set him upon the throne of David his father. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Zibiah, and she was from Beersheba. And Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, was killed. And Joash requited with evil the kindness which Jehoiada had done with him. And after his death he shed the innocent blood of his sons. And Joash died, and Amaziah his son reigned after him. Amaziah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Joadan. And Amaziah died, and Uzziah his son reigned after him. Uzziah was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 50 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Jechaliah. And he did that which was good before the Lord. Now he made bold to go into the Holy of Holies, and he took the censer from the priest of God, Azariah, and burned incense in the temple of the Lord. And because he did this, leprosy covered his face. And because Isaiah the prophet did not rebuke him, he was prevented from prophesying until Uzziah died, and Jotham his son reigned in his stead. Jotham was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And he did that which was good before the Lord, and he died, and Ahaz his son reigned after him. Ahaz, a vassal of the king of Assyria. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Aphan, the daughter of Levi. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, and he sacrificed to devils. Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, went up against him, and Ahaz wrote himself down in his letter as his servant. And the Assyrian held him in subjection. And Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria the gold and silver which were in the house of the Lord. And in the days the children of Israel were carried off into captivity. And the king sent for the men who had come from Babel, so that they might dwell in the land instead of the children of Israel, because they could kill the lions. And the king of Assyria sent to them Ori the priest, and he taught them the laws. And Ahaz died, and Hezekiah his son reigned after him. Hezekiah. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was pleasing before the Lord, for he smashed the altars, and he cut in pieces the serpent of brass which Moses made in the wilderness, because the children of Israel used to worship it, and he abolished heathen practices in Jerusalem. In the 4th year of his reign, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up and carried away captive the rest of the children of Israel, and he sent them into Media, beyond Babel. And in the 20th year of Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up and took all the cities and towns of Judah, but through the prayer of Hezekiah, Jerusalem was saved. He captured 46 of Hezekiah's strongholds and brought out from them 200,150 people, and horses, mules, asses, camels, oxen, and innumerable sheep. He then shut up Hezekiah like a caged bird. Hezekiah's soldiers deserted, and he sent his envoy to Nineveh to pay his tribute to Sennacherib. And this was 30 talents of gold, 800 talents of silver, precious stones, eye paint, couches and chairs of ivory, hides, tusks, precious woods, and his daughters with their attendants and musicians. And Hezekiah became sick unto death, and it was grievous unto him, and he wept. And there were certain men who blamed him, but why his sickness was grievous unto him, they never troubled to acquaint themselves. Now the sorrow of Hezekiah came upon him, because when he became sick unto death, he had no son to reign after him. And when he looked with the eyes of his soul, and saw that he had no son to reign after him, he was afflicted, and wept, and said, Woe is me, for I must die childless, and that blessing which hath been given unto us for 46 generations hath been cut off by me this day. I have become the destroyer of the kingdom of David, and the succession of the kings of Judah hath been cut off this day. This was the cause of the sorrow of Hezekiah. And after he recovered from his sickness, he waited 14 years, and then Manasseh was born to him. And Hezekiah died in great content, and left a son to sit upon the throne of David his father. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hephzibah. He was a man who was more evil and iniquitous than all those who had lived before him. He had builded altars to devils and sacrificed to idols, and he filled Jerusalem with iniquity and provoked God to wrath. And because Isaiah the prophet rebuked him, he threatened him and sent men who were sons of iniquity, and they saw Isaiah the prophet in twain with a saw between two pieces of wood from his head downwards to his feet. And Isaiah was 120 years old when they sawed him in twain, and he had been the prophet of God for 90 years. And Manasseh repented after he had slain Isaiah, and he put sackcloth on his body, and decreed fasting for himself, and he ate bread with tears all the days of his life, because he had committed iniquity, and had slain the prophet. And Manasseh died, and Amon reigned after him. Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Mashlemeth. And Amon did evil before the Lord, and he made his sons to pass through fire. He died, and Hosea his son reigned after him. Hosea was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Jedidah, the daughter of Azariah, from Bezkoth. And he did what was good before the Lord, and he walked in all the way wherein his father David had walked. And he turned aside neither to the right hand nor to the left. And Pharaoh the lame killed him, and Joazol his son reigned after him. And Joazol was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamtal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Lebnah. And he did what was evil before the Lord, even as Manasseh had done. And Pharaoh the lame, king of Egypt, took him prisoner in Dibloth in the land of Hamath, whilst he was king in Jerusalem, and he laid tribute on the land, 100 talents of silver and 10 talents of gold. And Pharaoh the lame made Eliakim the son of Jonah king instead of Hosea his father, and he made his name to be Joachim. And he carried away Joahaz, and he went to Egypt and died there. And Joachim gave silver and gold to Pharaoh. He laid the payment of silver and gold on the land according to the word of Pharaoh's mouth. Every man according to what it was right for him to pay, brought silver and gold from the people of the land, according to the command of the mouth of Pharaoh the lame. Joachim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Zebedah, the daughter of Pedaiah from Ramah. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as his fathers had done. In his days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, went up against Jerusalem, and Joachim became his vessel for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him, and the Lord stirred up bands of robbers against him because of his sins. And Joachim slept with his fathers, and Joachim his son reigned after him. And the king of Egypt did not come forth again out of his country, for the king of Babel captured all the land that belonged to the king of Egypt, from the river of Egypt to the river of Euphrates. Joachim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan from Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as his father had done. And that time Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, went up against Jerusalem, and the king of Babel took him with him in the 8th year of his kingdom. And he brought out from there all the treasure of the house of the Lord, and the treasure of the king's house, and he carried off into captivity to Babel all the people of Jerusalem, and Joachim and his mother and his wives and his nobles. And the king brought captive to Babel all the men who had made war. And the king of Babel made Mathaniah, the uncle of Joachim, king in his stead, and he called his name Zedekiah. The capture of Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamtal, the daughter of Jeremiah, from Libnah. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as did Joachim, and the wrath of the Lord was fell upon Jerusalem. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babel, and in the 9th year of his kingdom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, came against Jerusalem, and the city was fettered with affliction until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And the city was rent open, and all the mighty men of war fled from the city by night by the way of the plain. And the soldiers of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him on the plain of Jericho, and all his soldiers were driven away from him. And the Chaldeans captured Zedekiah, and took him up to the king of Babel at Debloth, and he passed judgment upon him. And the king of Babel slew the sons of Zedekiah the king before his eyes, and he blinded the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in chains, and carried him to Babel. And Simeon the high priest, because he had freedom of speech with the commander of the Chaldean army, made entreaty to him, and the commander of the army gave him all the books of the scriptures, and did not burn them. And Simeon the high priest gathered them together, and cast them into a pit or a dry well. And Jerusalem was laid waste and made desolate, and no man remained therein except Jeremiah the prophet, who sat and raised lamentations over it for 20 years. And Jeremiah the prophet died in Samaria, and the priest buried him in Jerusalem, according to the oath which the prophet made him to swear. Now up to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, the Hebrew, Greek, and Syrian writers were in possession of the truth, and they were able to produce the registers of the genealogies of the tribes and the people. But from the destruction of Jerusalem and onwards, there has been no truth in their writings except as regards the heads of the tribes, or the patriarchs, and they are unable to prove whence the succession of the priests took its reign. Joachim. And Joachim was bound in prison for 37 years, and after he came forth from prison, he took to wife Gulith, the daughter of Eliakim, and he begot by her in Babel Salathiel, and Joachim died in Babel. And Salathiel took to wife Hetboth, the daughter of Halkanah, and he begot by her Zerubbabel, who took to wife Malkath, the daughter of Ezra the scribe, but no son was born to him by her in Babel. In the days of Zerubbabel, the prince of Judah, Cyrus the Persian reigned in Babel. Cyrus. And Cyrus took to wife the daughter of Zelathiel, the sister of Zerubbabel, and he took to her to wife according to the law of Persians, and made her his queen. And she entreated Cyrus to bring about the return of the children of Israel to Jerusalem. And inasmuch as Zerubbabel was her brother, she was very insistent about the return to Jerusalem of those who had been led away into captivity. Now Cyrus loved his wife as he loved himself, and he did for her what she had wished. And he sent forth heralds into all the land of Babel, ordering all the children of Israel to gather themselves together. And when they were gathered together, Cyrus said unto Zerubbabel his wife's brother, Rise up, and take with thee all the children of thy people, and go up to Jerusalem in peace, and rebuild the city of thy fathers, and dwell and reign therein. And because Cyrus brought about the return of the children of Israel to Jerusalem, God said, I have taken my servant Cyrus by his right hand. And the name of Cyrus was called My Shepherd, the Anointed of the Lord, because his seed was received into the seed of David through Mashianoth, the sister of Zerubbabel, whom he had taken to wife. And the children of Israel went up from Babel, and Zerubbabel became king over them, and Joshua the son of Jozadak the son of Aaron was high priest, even as the angel showed Zechariah the prophet, and said unto him, These are the sons of the oil of consecration. And the people of the captivity went up in the 2nd year of Cyrus, and the 5,000 years came to an end.